Sick canine German Shepherd chases after man begging to be rescued. Then something heartbreaking happens. In a forgotten corner of the city, a canine German Shepherd, once proud and strong, now sick and frail, found himself abandoned with no one left to fight for him. His body was failing, but his spirit, that unbreakable loyalty he was trained for, was still alive. One day, he spotted a man walking by, a complete stranger. Summoning the last of his strength, the German Shepherd ran after him, not to attack, not to defend, but to beg, to plead with every ounce of his being, "Don't leave me." What happened next will break your heart and stay with you forever. It's a story of pain, resilience, and the unshakable bond between a soul in need and a stranger willing to listen. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring more inspiring and powerful stories like this one straight to you. Stories of hope, courage, and second chances. Now, let's dive into this unforgettable journey. The autumn wind blew sharp and cold down the cracked sidewalks of the old industrial district. Most people had abandoned this part of town years ago. Boarded up factories, rusting fences, and littered alleys stretched like a graveyard of forgotten dreams. It was the kind of place where no one looked twice at a stray dog limping through the streets. But today was different. Today, someone noticed. Michael Turner pulled his jacket tighter around his chest as he hurried along the sidewalk, a brown paper bag tucked under one arm. His mind was on dinner, on bills, on the endless grind of his life. He didn't see the German Shepherd at first, just a blur of movement out of the corner of his eye. The dog stumbled into the open, ribs sharp against thinning fur, one paw dragging slightly behind him. His head was low, but his eyes, those dark, pleading eyes, locked onto Michael with a desperate intensity that stopped him cold. Michael hesitated, torn between the instinct to move on and the knot of guilt tightening in his stomach. He wasn't the kind of man who got involved. Life had taught him that caring too much led only to disappointment. He turned away. That's when he heard it, the soft, hoarse whine, a sound not of aggression, but of begging. Michael turned back just in time to see the dog take a few shaky steps toward him, then collapse onto his side, chest heaving with effort. For a moment, the world around Michael disappeared, the crumbling buildings, the biting wind, and all he could see was this broken creature fighting to live, fighting to be seen. Something cracked inside him, cursing under his breath. Michael dropped his bag and crouched down. "Hey, buddy," he said softly, holding out a hand. "Easy. I'm not gonna hurt you." The dog lifted his head slightly, ears twitching. He tried to stand but crumpled again, letting out a low, guttural whimper that cut straight to Michael's heart. Michael edged closer. That's when he saw it. The faded tattoo on the dog's ear, the telltale mark of a retired K9 unit. This wasn't just any stray. This was a working dog. A hero, discarded like trash. Anger flared through him, hot and sharp. "Who did this to you?" he muttered. The dog inched forward, nudging Michael's knee with his muzzle as if answering, "Please, help me." Michael glanced around. No one in sight. No collars, no owners, no hope. He had a choice. He could walk away, like everyone else had. Pretend he hadn't seen. Pretend it wasn't his problem. Or he could do something he hadn't done in years. He could care. Michael peeled off his jacket and carefully wrapped it around the trembling dog. The German Shepherd flinched at first, then went still, trusting him completely in that one fragile moment. "It's gonna be okay," Michael said, more a promise to himself than to the dog. "I'll get you some help." He lifted the dog into his arms. The weight was lighter than it should have been. The dog was all bone and skin and sheer stubborn will. As Michael carried him toward his old pickup truck, He felt the dog's head press weakly against his chest. A tear slipped down Michael's cheek before he could stop it. He hadn't cried since the day he buried his younger brother, since the day he learned that no matter how hard you fought, sometimes you still lost. But today, for this broken canine, he cried. He placed the dog gently on the passenger seat, tucking the jacket tighter around him. The dog's eyes fluttered open briefly, searching Michael's face, as if memorizing it. Michael turned the key in the ignition, the engine rattling to life. "We're gonna make it, buddy," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I promise." He didn't know then how hard that promise would be to keep. He didn't know that saving the dog would cost him more than he could imagine, or that before this journey was over, he would need saving too. But as he pulled away from the curb, Michael understood one thing with absolute clarity. Some souls were meant to find each other, even in the darkest places. Especially in the darkest places. The tires of Michael's old pickup screeched into the parking lot of the nearest animal hospital, a small, aging building sandwiched between an abandoned laundromat and a pawn shop. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as he pulled the truck into a crooked stop. For a moment, he just sat there, staring at the worn entrance, gathering his breath. Beside him, the German Shepherd barely moved, his chest rising and falling in shallow, labored gasps. His body looked even more fragile in the harsh light. Every rib, every scar, painfully visible. Michael reached over and ran a hand gently over the dog's head. "Hang in there, buddy," he whispered. "We're here." Inside the clinic, the air smelled of antiseptic and something older, something sad. A tired-looking receptionist looked up as Michael burst through the door carrying the dog in his arms. "Please." "Hey, Ma, he needs help." Michael gasped. The woman stood immediately, her eyes widening at the sight of the sickly animal. She spoke into an intercom, summoning help. Moments later, a young vet tech appeared with a stretcher. Together, they eased the German Shepherd onto it, the dog whining softly, but not resisting. His trust in Michael was complete, and it broke Michael's heart even more. As they wheeled him into the back, a slim man in a white coat approached. His name tag read Dr. Evans. "You found him like this?" he asked. Michael nodded, struggling to find his voice. "He chased me down, like he was begging to be saved." Now Dr. Evans gave a small, sad smile. "Then he found the right man." The words hit Michael harder than he expected. He sat numbly in the waiting room as time dragged by, every second stretching into an eternity. His knee bounced restlessly, his fingers tapping a nervous rhythm against the armrest. Every time the door creaked open, he jerked his head up, hoping, fearing. Finally, after what felt like hours, Dr. Evans returned. His face was serious, too serious. Michael stood. "How is he?" The doctor hesitated, and Michael's stomach twisted. "He's severely malnourished," Dr. Evans said. "Severely dehydrated. He has a fever likely from infection. There's old trauma, broken ribs that never healed properly, scars from what look like both bites and blunt force. He's in rough shape, Mr. Turner. Michael Turner." Dr. Evans nodded. "Mr. Turner, I won't lie to you. It's bad, and there's more. We ran a scan because of his breathing. He has fluid in his lungs. Pneumonia advanced." Michael felt like the ground tilted under him. "But we can treat him, right?" "He'll pull through?" he asked, his voice tight. The doctor sighed. "We'll do everything we can. Antibiotics, fluids, nutrition. But he's weak, very weak. It's going to be a fight, and he'll need someone willing to fight for him." Michael didn't even hesitate. "I'll do it. Whatever he needs." Dr. Evans smiled again, a little more warmly this time. "Good, because he's not just any dog." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small worn badge. It had been attached to the collar they'd removed in triage. Michael took it and turned it over in his hand. Canine Unit, Officer Rex. He's a retired police dog, Dr. Evans said. Or at least he was. Looks like he served for almost 8 years. Michael stared at the badge, his chest tightening. 8 years of loyalty. 8 years of service. And this was how the world repaid him? Abandonment. Pain. A death sentence. Not if Michael could help it. He closed his hand around the badge and nodded. "Can I see him?" he asked. The doctor hesitated, then motioned him down the hall. They led him into a sterile room where Rex lay on a thin mat, hooked up to IVs, his breathing shallow but steady. His eyes opened when Michael entered, tired, dull. But when he saw Michael, something flickered there. Recognition. Trust. Michael knelt beside him, placing a hand gently on his head. "I'm here, Rex," he said softly. "I'm not going anywhere." The dog gave a weak wag of his tail, a barely there movement, but enough to make Michael's throat tighten painfully. He stayed by Rex's side for hours, through the drip of IVs, through the quiet beeps of monitors. Outside, night fell and the world moved on, but Michael didn't notice. He had made a promise, and he was going to keep it, no matter what it cost him. The hours after midnight were the hardest. Michael sat slouched in the plastic chair beside Rex's mat, his jacket balled up as a makeshift pillow behind his head. The small, sterile room was filled with the steady hum of machines and the soft, labored sound of Rex's breathing. Outside, the city was quiet, a rare, uneasy peace hanging over the streets. Michael couldn't sleep. Every time Rex coughed, a wet, rattling sound deep in his chest, Michael jolted upright, heart hammering with fear. He watched the IV drip, counted the slow rise and fall of Rex's ribcage, willed the dog to keep fighting. He wasn't even sure why it mattered so much. He'd only met Rex a few hours ago, but somehow it felt like he had known this dog forever, like they were connected by something invisible, a thread of home, of loneliness, of survival. Michael rubbed his hands over his face, trying to shake off the memories pressing in, the ones he usually buried under long hours of work and empty evenings. The night his brother died, Michael had been out drinking, celebrating a promotion at a job he didn't even care about. When the phone call came, the crash, the hospital, the too late, guilt had buried itself so deep inside him that he hadn't truly lived since. Maybe that was why Rex mattered. Maybe saving Rex was a way to save some part of himself too. A soft whimper broke through his thoughts. Michael's head snapped up. Rex was awake, his head lifting slightly off the mat, his eyes glassy with fever, but fixed on Michael. Michael scooted closer, dropping to his knees. "Hey, easy," he murmured, reaching out to stroke the dog's head gently. "You're okay. I'm right here." Rex whined again, a low, pitiful sound that twisted in Michael's gut. Without thinking, Michael leaned in, letting Rex rest his heavy head against his lap. The dog's body shook with the effort of breathing, but he didn't pull away. He trusted Michael, utterly and completely, even in his weakest moment. Michael closed his eyes, one hand moving in slow circles over Rex's bony shoulders. "You're not alone anymore," he whispered. The night dragged on. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting fluids. Dr. Evans stopped by once, offering a tired but encouraging smile. "He's hanging in," he said. "It's more than I expected." Michael nodded, but didn't leave Rex's side for even a second. Around 3 a.m., Rex began to stir more restlessly. His legs twitched weakly, as if trying to run. His breathing grew ragged, panicked. No, Michael muttered, panic flaring. "Stay with me, buddy." He pressed his forehead lightly to Rex's, grounding them both. And then, miraculously, the fit passed. Rex's breathing eased, the frantic movement quieted. He went still again, his body relaxing against Michael's. Relief crashed over him so hard it left him trembling. He realized then, fully and completely, that he needed this dog as much as Rex needed him, maybe even more. When dawn finally crept in, pale and gray through the small window, Michael was still there. He shifted carefully, stretching stiff limbs, but he kept one hand resting on Rex's side. Rex was still breathing, still fighting, still alive. Michael smiled through the exhaustion, a real smile, the first in longer than he could remember. "You're a tough old boy," he said softly. "You're not done yet." Rex's ear twitched in response, and Michael laughed, a rough, broken sound that filled the tiny room with something it hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. The sun rose slowly, casting a weak light over the battered city, over the cracked sidewalks, and the broken hearts trying to heal. And somewhere deep inside that small, sterile room, two survivors, one man, one dog, made an unspoken promise. Whatever storms were coming, they would face them together. By late morning, Michael finally allowed himself to step outside the clinic for a few minutes. He needed air, needed to clear his mind. Rex was resting peacefully for the first time in hours, and Dr. Evans promised to stay close. The city smelled of rain and old concrete. Michael leaned against the side of the building, the badge Rex once wore heavy in his pocket. He pulled it out and turned it over slowly in his hands. K9 Unit, Officer Rex. No last name, no department, no owner. It didn't sit right with him. A dog like Rex didn't just end up abandoned unless something had gone very wrong. Michael knew he couldn't leave it alone. He needed answers. For Rex. For himself. He pulled out his phone and made some calls. It wasn't easy. The badge number was faded, the registry old. But after 2 hours and a lot of persistence, he finally got a lead. The K9 Unit from a small town 2 states over. When the officer on the other end of the line heard Rex's badge number, there was a long, heavy pause. "Yeah," the man finally said. "We know him." Michael's heart pounded. "What happened?" The officer's voice dropped low. "Rex was a hero. Saved 3 officers' lives during a drug bust gone wrong. Took a bullet doing it. After that, he was retired early." Medical reasons. His handler? Well, he didn't want Rex anymore once he was injured. Said he was too much trouble. Michael's stomach turned. "He just gave him up?" "Not officially," the officer admitted. "He said he'd find Rex a home, but we found out later he dumped him at a shelter. Didn't even leave his real paperwork. By the time anyone realized, Rex was gone." Michael gripped the phone tighter, fury rising in his chest. "Where's the handler now?" he asked. The officer sighed. "Still working? Transferred to another precinct. Clean record officially." Michael thanked him and hung up, feeling sick. He leaned against the truck, staring at the sky. Rex had been thrown away by the person he trusted most, after everything he'd given, after nearly dying to protect others. And still Rex had the strength to chase after a stranger, begging not for revenge but for love, for a chance. Michael closed his eyes. He knew that feeling too well. Being discarded, being left behind. He went back inside the clinic, his heart heavier, but his purpose clearer. When he entered the recovery room, Rex stirred, his ears perked weakly, and his tail gave a soft thump against the mat. "Hey, buddy," Michael said, crouching down beside him. "I found out a little about you." He ran a hand gently over Rex's head. "You're a hero," he whispered, "and they didn't deserve you." Rex blinked up at him, slow and trusting. "I'm not gonna be like them," Michael promised. "You're not a burden. You're not too much trouble. You're family." The word caught in his throat. He hadn't said it out loud in years, hadn't believed he could ever have it again. But looking into Rex's tired, loyal eyes, he knew it was true. They were family now. Broken pieces, fitting together, Over the next few hours, Michael worked with Dr. Evans to set a plan. Antibiotics, regular feedings, careful physical therapy. It would be a long road and expensive. Michael barely made enough as a mechanic to cover his own bills, and Rex's care would be brutal. But he didn't hesitate. He filled out the paperwork. He signed his name. He made it official. Rex Turner. As Michael tucked the completed forms into his jacket, he caught sight of himself in the reflection of the clinic window. For the first time in a long time, he didn't see a vet barely holding it together. He saw someone with a reason to fight. He turned back to Rex, who was dozing lightly on his mat. "We've both been through hell, huh?" Michael said softly. "But maybe it's not too late for us." Rex's ear twitched in his sleep, and Michael smiled. Outside, the world was still broken, still cruel. But inside this tiny room, something new was taking root. Hope. Real, stubborn, reckless hope. And Michael wasn't about to let it go. Not this time. For the next few days, Michael barely left Rex's side. He slept in a chair pulled close to the recovery mat, woke every few hours to help the vet techs administer meds or coax Rex to sip water. Little by little, there were signs of hope. A steady heartbeat, a small wag of the tail when Michael spoke. Eyes that stayed open a little longer each time. Michael clung to those victories. They were lifelines. But on the fifth night, everything changed. It started with a cough. Rougher than before. Deeper. Then another, and another, until Rex was gasping, his whole body racked with effort. Alarms blared from the machines, the rhythmic beeping shattering into frantic noise. "Something's wrong," Michael shouted, panic seizing his chest. Within seconds, Dr. Evans and 2 nurses rushed into the room. They moved quickly, checking vitals, adjusting oxygen levels. Michael was pushed gently aside, standing helplessly against the wall as chaos unfolded in front of him. "His lungs," Dr. Evans muttered grimly. "The infection's spreading faster than we thought." Michael's hands shook as he watched them work, desperate to do something, anything. But there was nothing he could do in it. Finally, Dr. Evans pulled the oxygen mask away from Rex's muzzle and turned to Michael. "We need to be honest," he said gently. "He's at a breaking point. His body's fighting, but it's exhausted. We can try more aggressive treatment, stronger antibiotics, oxygen therapy. But it's risky. It could help, or it could push him over the edge." Michael felt the blood drain from his face. "If we don't try?" he asked hoarsely. Dr. Evans shook his head. "Then he might not make it through the night." Michael looked at Rex, his broken body trembling with the effort of every breath, his eyes dull with pain, but still searching for Michael's face, still trusting him. He couldn't give up on him. Not after everything Rex had survived. Not after Rex had chosen him. Michael nodded, voice shaking. "Do whatever it takes. Fight for him." Dr. Evans nodded and sprang into action. The next hours were a blur. New IVs were hooked up. A special oxygen tank was wheeled in. The room smelled of disinfectant and desperation. Michael stayed as close as he could, whispering to Rex, stroking his head gently. "You're not alone," he murmured again and again. "I'm right here. You're not alone." There were moments when Rex seemed to slip away, his breathing slowing, his body going frighteningly still. Michael would lean in, calling his name, begging him to hold on. And somehow, every time, Rex would twitch, lift his paw, give a tiny, stubborn sign that he was still fighting. By dawn, Michael was so exhausted he could barely see straight. But when he looked at Rex, still breathing, still holding on, he knew it had been worth it. Dr. Evans returned, his face drawn but relieved. "He's stable for now," he said, "but it's still touch and go. The next 24 hours are critical." Michael nodded, Unable to speak past the lump in his throat, he settled back into his chair, reaching out to rest his hand lightly on Rex's paw. "You're the bravest soul I've ever met," he whispered. Rex's eyes fluttered open briefly, and in them, Michael saw it. The same fierce spirit that had once rushed into danger to save lives. The same heart that refused to quit even when the world abandoned him. It wasn't over yet, not if they had anything to say about it. As the sun rose higher in the sky, bathing the small clinic room in warm golden light, Michael closed his eyes for a moment, still holding Rex's paw in his hand. They would fight, together, until the very end. Whatever happened next, they wouldn't face it alone, not anymore. The morning dragged by in slow, heavy minutes. Michael sat like a statue beside Rex's recovery bed, afraid that even breathing too loudly might tip the balance. Every beep of the monitor, every shuddering breath, felt like a battle cry against the darkness, trying to pull Rex under. But as the hours crawled on, Michael began to notice something. Small changes at first, so slight he thought he was imagining it. The breathing that had been ragged and shallow now grew steadier. The terrible coughing fits became fewer, softer. Rex's body, once limp and defeated, now held a fragile tension, like a fighter gathering strength for one more round. Dr. Evans entered, reviewing the monitors with a critical eye. After a long silence, he gave a small nod. "He's responding," he said, almost disbelieving. "The new treatment, it's working." Michael let out a shaky laugh, pressing his hand against his forehead to hide the tears springing to his eyes. Relief washed over him so powerfully it almost knocked him flat. He turned to Rex, who was watching him now through heavy-lidded eyes. There was something new in them. A spark, faint but real. "You stubborn old dog," Michael whispered with a smile. "You're not done yet, are you?" Rex gave the faintest wag of his tail, a slow, deliberate sweep against the mat. It wasn't much, but to Michael, it felt like a miracle. Over the next few days, Rex's progress, though slow, was steady. He could lift his head now. He could lap water from a bowl if Michael held it carefully beneath his nose. His body was still gaunt, his movements shaky, but there was life in him again. Real, fighting life. Michael spent every moment he could with him, reading aloud from old novels he found at the clinic, telling Rex stories about the city, about the stars, about anything and everything, just to keep the sound of his voice in the room. He talked about his brother, about the mistakes he had made, about the second chances he never thought he'd get. "You saved me, too, you know," Michael said one afternoon, scratching behind Rex's ear. "I thought I was just surviving. Turns out I was waiting for you." Rex closed his eyes, leaning into Michael's hand. For the first time in years, Michael didn't feel hollow. He felt needed, connected, alive. Dr. Evans visited often, always cautious, but increasingly optimistic. "He's a fighter," the doctor said one evening, standing at the foot of Rex's mat. "Most dogs would have given up long ago." Michael smiled, pride swelling in his chest. "He's not most dogs," he said. They began to plan for Rex's release, tentative plans, full of warnings about the long recovery ahead, the medication, the therapy. Michael listened to it all, agreeing without hesitation. He would do whatever it took. He owed Rex that. One evening, just as the sun dipped low behind the city skyline, Michael took Rex outside for the first time since the rescue. It was a small patch of grass behind the clinic, nothing grand. But to them, it might as well have been Eden. Michael carried Rex in his arms, but once they reached the grass, he set him down gently. Rex stood, trembling, uncertain. But he stood. Michael knelt beside him, ready to catch him if he fell. But Rex took one slow, careful step forward, then another. He turned his head, looking back at Michael as if to say, "See? I can do this." Michael laughed through tears he didn't bother to hide. "You're amazing, Rex," he whispered. Under the fading orange sky, Rex made his first small walk toward healing, toward hope, toward a life that was no longer about surviving, but about living. Michael sat there in the grass beside him long after the stars came out, watching the city lights blink on one by one. They had a long road ahead, but for the first time, it didn't seem impossible. They had each other, and together they would build something new. A family. A week later, Michael opened the passenger door of his old pickup, and Rex, thinner but stronger, climbed in by himself. It was a clumsy jump, and he needed a little help, but the pride in Rex's eyes was undeniable. Michael laughed under his breath, ruffling the fur between Rex's ears. "You're a free dog now," he whispered. "Time to go home." Home was small, a battered little house on the edge of the city, nothing special. But to Rex, it might as well have been a castle. He limped from room to room, sniffing every corner, tail wagging slowly, discovering the place where he would live out the rest of his days in peace. Michael set down a new dog bed by the couch. But when he sat down, Rex didn't hesitate. He crawled up beside him, laying his head on Michael's lap like he'd always belonged there. Michael rested his hand on Rex's back, feeling the steady thump of his heartbeat beneath thin fur. They had both lost everything once, but now they had something more powerful than anything either had known. They had each other. Michael closed his eyes, breathed in the quiet, and smiled. Maybe this was what saving someone really meant, saving yourself in the process. Before you go, if this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share it with someone who still believes in second chances, and in the kind of loyalty that never fades, no matter how broken the world seems.